Hola con todos, muy buenas tardes. Muchísimas gracias por estar conectados aquí el día de hoy. Estamos con Education USA y con Duke University Nicholas School of the Environment y tenemos un webinar muy especial preparados para ustedes. Vamos a estar conversando sobre las diferencias entre un título profesional y un título de investigación. Si tienen dudas a cualquier punto del webinar, por favor escriban las preguntas en el chat. Al final vamos a tener un Q&A para contestar todas sus dudas. También les quiero recordar del maravilloso convenio que tenemos con esta universidad cuando son seleccionados como beneficiarios del programa Crédito Beca. Con Duke University Nicholas School of the Environment hay una beca mínima de $6,000 para los programas de maestría de esta escuela en particular. Si ustedes están interesados en postularse al programa Crédito Beca, les recuerdo que la convocatoria abre el 10 de enero, cierra el 28 de febrero y los resultados salen el 11 de mayo. Si quieren más información sobre el programa Crédito Beca, los invito a que entren a colfuturo.org, hagan clic en programas, luego programa Crédito Beca, y ahí estará toda la información que necesitan. Entonces hoy les voy a presentar, estamos aquí con Nick, Cynthia, Juan Camilo y Melissa. Thank you so much for being here. We are so excited to hear about, professional degrees versus, academic and research degrees. So it's a very interesting topic, and we're really happy that you guys took the time to be here with us today. So without further ado, Melissa, welcome. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Bianca, and thank you to everyone joining us this evening. My name is Melissa Kopachka, and I am one of our Assistant Directors of Admission here at the Nicholas School of the Environment at Duke University. With me this evening are two of my colleagues, and I will have them introduce themselves, as well as one of our current first-year students in our Master of Environmental Management. And so I'm going to pass it to Nick, who will pass it to Cindy, who will pass it to Juan Camilo. For introductions.
Buenas tardes todos. My name is Nick. I am one of the assistant directors of admissions here at the Nicholas School, and we're really glad that you're here to learn more about our program. Cindy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy Peters. I am an assistant dean here in the Nicholas School. I've been here almost 22 years. So I'm very familiar with the school and would be happy to answer questions that you might have. I also do the financial aid for our professional master's degree students, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Juan Camilo Moreno, yo soy de Bogotá. I'm an environmental engineer from the University of the Andes, and I'm actually on my first year and very first semester on my MEM program as an environmental economics and policy concentration here in the school.
Wonderful. So our plan for this evening is to share information about graduate and professional education in the United States and give an introduction to the two different types of graduate programs that exist in the US and the difference between a research graduate program and a professional graduate degree program. And because we offer professional master's degree programs at the Nicholas School, we will share what that looks like here. And then we will also be sure to leave time for question and answers and discussion at the end of the presentation. And so we wanted to start by giving an overview for US higher education as you work with Education USA to consider different options for studying in the United States. There are several different pathways that you may explore. And there are a number of ways that higher education looks here in the United States. So in the US, students finish their secondary school, their high school after grade 12, similar to Colombia, and then may either directly enter the workforce, may enter specific training for a particular trade, like becoming a technician in particular areas that require direct training, and then they may also enter 2 or 4-year institutions. So the typical route that we would see for students looking at graduate study are going to be from students who have completed at least a 4-year degree. So the 4-year bachelor's in the US, similar to Colombia, is going to be 4 years, typically 8 semesters. And that can lead to eligibility for graduate level study. And when we think about the types of graduate study in the United States, there are some professions that require professional and graduate level study, and there are some that recommend it. And that's how we're going to kind of dig into the differences between those programs. And when we think about the types of programs that students are pursuing, this is the conversation that Nick and I have with prospective students, of being able to kind of figure out, are we the best fit? Are we the type of program that you are looking for with your experiences and whatnot? I want to make sure, is the screen being shared? No. Okay.
Not yet.
There we go. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Hey, Nick, that's what you were trying to say to me and I didn't hear it. Cool. All right. This is why teamwork is so important, because you have people who can catch you.
Absolutely.
So here's the graphic that I was describing. But looking at when students finish their high school diploma and graduate, there's also kind of the equivalent of for students who may follow a non-traditional path. But that opens the door to higher education. And also some jobs can be undertaken directly after graduating from 12th grade from high school. And then moving into undergraduate study at that bachelor's degree or at that 2-year institution, and then graduate and professional degrees come after the completion of the bachelor's. So this is an example of the different types of pathways that show up in US higher education. And now we will move into seeing the differences. The first type of graduate education in the US that we are going to explore are what are typically referred to as more research degrees and research programs that are really focusing on developing research skills and developing deep academic knowledge in a particular subject area, and also with the goal of then creating new knowledge in that particular field. And examples of this may be Master of Arts degrees and Master of Science, or the PhD, the Doctor of Philosophy degrees. And these are degrees that are really going to be focused on developing a very deep sense of knowledge for the sake of knowledge. And there are programs that are, in addition to taking coursework, there usually is also a very intense process of perhaps developing a portfolio, developing a particular research question that you are exploring during the course of your program. So for example, when I finished my undergraduate degree at the University of Iowa, I decided that I wanted to pursue a PhD in the field I was studying at that time, which was Russian literature. And I applied to a PhD program, a research program, and my goal was to be a university faculty member. I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to teach. I wanted to do research in that particular area. I ended up not completing the PhD. I just took my master's after 2 years because I realized it wasn't the fit for me. But I was very much involved in that sort of close-knit pursuit of very specific type of knowledge. The idea with research degrees is also that you are learning to write as an academic, and you are typically writing for other academic members of that community. And the idea is that you are, again, being an expert in that particular area, and admissions consideration often requires that you be in contact with faculty at that program or at that university. And so, like any undertaking of work or study, you want to do as much research as possible and ask questions and learn information about the program and about the people that you would be working with. And with this type of degree, you also want and typically need to pay particular attention to the faculty member who might be your advisor, who might be your sponsor, who might be the person, for example, if you're in a field that has laboratory research, that you would be working in their laboratory group. And so the idea that you are in touch with that program before admission with a specific faculty member is something that is often unique to these types of programs. Funding here can also sometimes be available because faculty members at these types of programs may have sources of funding through grants. The institution may have funds available for these types of programs. And there may be other ways to develop funding for that. And when it comes to financial aid questions, that's where I'm going to ask Cindy to share her perspective, because at the Nicholas School, we have both undergraduate and master's and doctoral students. From an admissions perspective, we work specifically with the master's students, but Cindy can speak to what it looks like with this type of program. And so, Cindy, I'm going to go on mute and pass it to you for a moment.
Okay. So funding for professional master's degrees is different from funding for doctoral programs in most institutions in the US. Particularly at Duke, that is the case. Doctoral students do get a lot of funding, covering their tuition, their fees, their living expenses, typically for 5 years. So there's a lot of pressure to get your doctorate finished in 5 years. For the professional master's degree, the bulk of the cost does fall on the student to cover their tuition and fees and living expenses. The Nicholas School does provide financial aid, but it is limited. So every student coming into the program, regardless of whether they're US citizens, permanent residents, international students coming in on an F1 or a J1 visa, all have to have personal resources to support their studies. Like I said, we do give financial aid, but it is limited. We give 2 types of financial aid. We give merit-based aid, which is based on the application for admission. So I'm sure they'll explain to you, or Melissa will, about the admissions process, but you apply, the decision is made whether or not to admit you. If you're admitted, then you're considered for merit-based aid. And you could get nothing. You could get up to $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 for the year. It is renewable for the second year. We expect to renew it for the second year, but we do reserve the right to review your academic progress before that renews for the second year. The school also does reserve some small portion of its financial aid resources for need-based grants. That requires a separate application. And there is information at our website under admissions and then financial support and aid that goes into the details about how to apply for a need-based grant. The deadline for that is mid-February. You may not have heard about whether or not you've been admitted by the time the deadline comes around. So the important thing would be, if you want to be considered for a need-based grant, then you need to go ahead and submit that application by the stated deadline. Otherwise, you'll miss out. If you're admitted, then they will take a look at your need-based application once the admissions decision has been made. But your need does not influence whether or not you get admitted. So you don't need to worry about that. So 2 separate kind of buckets of financial aid. Merit-based aid, merit is based totally on the application for admission. And then need-based aid, which is based on how you demonstrate need and the forms that you submit and all that sort of thing. But regardless of all of these resources, and you can see right there under financial support for master's degree students, the Nicholas School Merit-Based Aid, and then the Nicholas School Need-Based Grant Program. And you can, if you look a little bit further down, you can see Colfuturo for Colombian citizens. And so what we do, we have an agreement with Colfuturo that we will provide up to $6,000 of support for a student who comes in with support from Colfuturo, who's been accepted. Now, if you apply and you coming in with under Colfuturo, you'll get at least $6,000. You could get more, but you would get at least that much. Now, if you apply and get admitted and get a merit-based aid, and then you get accepted by Colfuturo, you would get up to that 6,000. But if you're already getting 6,000, you're not going to get an additional 6,000. The only thing that would change would be kind of the bucket that the money comes out of. So you know you will get at least 6,000 if you're part of Colfuturo. You could potentially get more depending on the merit of your application, and if you submit an application for a need-based grant from the school. So then all of our domestic students, U.S. citizens and permanent residents, are eligible to participate in the U.S. federal loan programs. You are not if you're coming in under an F1 or a J1 visa. If you're a dual citizen, you might be eligible for the federal loan programs. That requires the submission of the federal free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA. But most of you are going to have to find other resources for your support. So it may be that you have personal resources, family, personal funds that you've been saving for. That's great. Some of you may be eligible. There may be educational loans available through the Colombian government or through other organizations. Sometimes some people work out these arrangements with, say, a company where they would go, the company would help fund their studies, and then the student would commit a certain number of years to that company, so the company gets their money back. There are also outside potential scholarship resources, and Melissa's expanded that down. That's the same website. This we review every year and post as a courtesy to our students to make sure that they're still valid. These are ones are particularly aimed at international students. What I tell students to do is use this list as your inspiration. Don't be bound or limited by it, but use it as your inspiration to do your own internet searching. There is money out there. No one organization is going to give you a big check, but you might get 1,000 from one company or corporation or group, 500 from another. So you can potentially cobble together, but it does take time and it does take effort. Deadlines are generally fairly early in the year, so you may not have your admissions letter in time for some of those deadlines, but you just keep that information in mind and you could potentially do it for your second year. So again, some school-based aid, everybody, including domestic students, have to have other forms of financial support. The key thing for international students to remember is that in order to be eligible to receive a visa to come to the US, you have to show proof of funding for your first year. And that's tuition fees and living expenses. So just keep that in mind. The US is not, Duke is not going to issue the I-20, and you're not going to be able to get your F1 visa at the US consulate without having that proof of funding. So Melissa, I'll stop there. We can talk later about things like CPT, OPT, etc.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cindy. And so when we are transitioning to the, we kind of bridged it there of starting with funding about research programs, and then talking about the differences in financial funding. And now we can look at what those professional programs really entail. And this is where the focus on professional degree programs are going to be focused on training particular skills and practical knowledge that is also related to specific types of employment or specific fields. In the US, these programs are typically 1 to 4 years in length, and they are mostly based in coursework and really digging into making sure that you are getting practical experience where you can apply what you're learning in the classroom to real situations, such as through an internship or case studies, looking at student and professional groups that exist as co-curricular activities. So for example, here at the Nicholas School, we have a very high number of student groups that are either focused around a particular topic of interest across different program areas, such as the Duke Water Network or the Duke Environmental Justice Network, or we have chapters of national and international organizations, such as last week, I was at the National Convention for the Society of American Foresters, which is the governing body in the US for people in the forestry profession. And we have a local chapter here at Duke of the Society of American Foresters. So we have that smaller institution-specific chapter that connects to that national organization. And through that, there are a lot of opportunities that students can pursue to get additional experience, learn additional skills that go beyond what you are already doing in your degree program. Some professional degrees are required in order to legally practice. And in particular in the US, this is very applicable to medical doctors and dentists. There are also lawyers in the US have to pursue a professional degree after completing the bachelor's. So the length of time of investing in becoming a medical doctor in the US is a minimum of 8 years of study. For a lawyer, it is a minimum of 7 years because you are doing your 4-year bachelor's degree plus the 4 years of medical school or the 3 years of law school. For other areas and other professions, people may be able to enter their profession with the bachelor's degree, but they may have more opportunities by doing graduate and professional level study. And an example of this is in business, where we do have undergraduate business programs. We also have students who perhaps at the undergraduate level may study something related and, such as economics, and may be working in private industry or with consulting firms. But a master's of business administration trains students with a different set of skills around management and leadership and business administration that allows students to gain higher positions in their career, allows them to earn more money, allows them to have different types of positions. And we see this in other areas as well, such as forestry, environmental management, education, public policy, divinity, and areas like that. And so similarly with the research programs, the professional degree programs, you want to think, what am I wanting to do after I finish my degree? And this is, again, that conversation that Nick and I have with students is, what type of work are you looking to do? And what is the pathway that will get you the skills and the knowledge you need in order to do that? If someone does want to go into more of an academic route and be a university professor, or to work for, institutions that tend to require people to have PhDs or that highest degree in the academic field in order to work for that, a PhD program or a master in that research program may be a better fit. If someone is really excited about working on specific types of knowledge, and really spending time, delving into a topic very deeply, that's where a research degree can be the better fit. For students who may be looking to do a specific type of work, a professional degree program may either be what's required or may be that better fit. And this is where I would love to have Juan Camilo share kind of his thought process in thinking about the types of graduate programs that he wanted to explore. And I'm also going to stop sharing my screen while we're here, and then we will jump back in. But Juan Camilo, let's start with, what was your thought process as you considered graduate programs, and what type of programs were you considering, and how did you end up at the Nicholas School? How did you end up at Duke?
Well, to begin with that, like, it's like a really long question, and I'll try to like make it very concise. I was thinking on that I wanted not to just be about me, about what I like research and that's it. I wanted actually to be more involving process, and for it like to actually collaborate with other people and really smart and really like meaningful people towards goals as shared mankind. Because one of our problems is actually as humankind is like sometimes we have this trend in addressing environmental problems in a way that we think they're specifically for one part, or they can just be addressed on some solutions. But that being said, then I can go and tell you that environmental sciences are actually not environmental sciences at all without social sciences. So I wanted to be like, to have actually an holistic approach to what I was doing and to my mission statement as the things I learned, how can I help the world? And this is maybe like the usual stuff you hear out there, that I need to help the world, but it's not about me. It's how the world has given me, how the environment has given me, and how I'm going to give that back. So based on that I wanted actually to act on it, not just to investigate on it. I was like scoping my possibilities on the US. I always knew that I wanted to do my graduate studies abroad from home, but I haven't actually, when I met with the next school, like on the program, I haven't like realized the possibility that you're not here just only studying, you're working with the next school. So that's a very like important thing to consider about. And that's one of the things I considered about like being able to talk not just to some other fellow environmental engineers, but to an economist, to a policymaker, so we can make up the best of our professions, what we majored during undergrad, and make progress to actually sustainable development. We may have a very good opportunities within technologies that we develop in all countries, but, and this is like, I don't know if I can disclaim part of my admission statement here, Melissa, but that's actually one of the things that drive me. And it's like, we can have the best technology, we can have it, but if we don't manage it well, we will end up doing nothing at all. We have the resources, but then again, we have to know how to manage them and how to put them to good use. So that was the key factor. And when I started like narrowing my search, and I had the interview here with the next school and with the English program, like to verify that you have like a good English level. I told them that I have quitted my application to the Master in Science in Colombia because that was not the thing I was actually going to. You have to have very clear how you want to develop professionally, because that would help you narrowing a lot the search of institutions, university, and programs. But then again, here in the next school, one of the things I like the most is that since the very first moment that I started applying, I felt like already being part of the next school. I felt like a very huge welcome to it, just to know the possibilities, and also how like Melissa and Cynthia kept on with the loop with information, replying to emails, because sometimes we also like, it's a whole new place I'm going to. So I'm willing to risk it. I will say like it's totally risk it because the things because of the things you can get out is actually being to develop your own career while studying. You don't have to choose. Here you can do both things.
Well, thank you, Juan Camilo. I think the experience of discovering what programs are that good fit for you, that is such an important part of this process. And by doing things like joining webinars and sessions and reaching out to admissions offices and staff at the institutions you're considering, and also talking to people that do the kind of work you want to do and hearing their path and how they got there is something that's really important. When we think about, again, that idea of the professional masters and the professional degrees versus that research degree, I think it's also that idea of, again, you're not just learning, you're using what you're learning, you're working, you're doing that experience. And when we say you're working, we want to notate that you're not like working in a job, you're working because school is your job for the 2 years that you're with us in the on-campus full-time master's programs. And when we think about what that looks like here at the Nicholas School at Duke, these are the 4 professional master's degrees that we offer at the Nicholas School, and we are going to focus on our on-campus programs. And the reason we're going to focus on our on-campus programs is not only because those programs are the largest with that Master of Environmental Management and that Master of Forestry, they are also the programs that are eligible for that CoFuturo partnership. The other 2 programs that we have are our hybrid program, which is our Duke Environmental Leadership Master of Environmental Management. This is designed for working professionals who already have at least 5 years of experience working in the environmental field. And many of those students do continue working full-time while also going to school. That is doable, but it is also very much a challenge. I had the experience of going back to school in my 30s while I was working full-time to do a professional master's degree in career counseling. And I did a program that was designed to be very similar to the Dell, where our Dell students take courses synchronously at the same time online, and then they come together 5 times during their 2 years to be in person. We also offer an International Master of International Masters of Environmental Policy at the Duke Kunshan University campus, which is just outside of Shanghai. But where we're going to spend the bulk of our time this evening is talking about that Master of Environmental Management and the Master of Forestry and how those look as our professional degrees. Our Master of Environmental Management is the largest degree program we have in terms of the number of students. Duke University as a whole is made up of 10 schools and colleges. There are about 6,000 undergraduate students at Duke, and there are about 12,000 graduate and professional students. At the Nicholas School, we have about 650 total students in our undergraduate, master's, and doctoral programs. And this year we have, I think it's almost 400 students in our master's programs. And the bulk of those students are in our Master of Environmental Management. Starting next year, if you are applying for next fall, the students in our Master of Environmental Management will select one each of an environmental topic area and a management skill set. And so when Juan Camilo was introducing his program, he is currently in the environmental economics and policy program, because Juan Camilo's class will be the last one to have just one official focus area. What we have done with our faculty is pretty much update and refresh our curriculum so that it reflects what our students were already doing. Our students were already coming in wanting to do, not having to choose between economics and energy, not wanting to choose between, environmental health and environmental justice. So we're really excited for this to start next year. So for those of you that are thinking about applying this year or in future years, this is the curriculum that you'll be looking at. So of course, again, reflecting that bringing together of in-depth knowledge in a particular area with the skills to use it and apply it in practice. We also have our Master of Forestry. This is our oldest master's program that we offer. We have been doing forestry at Duke since the 1930s. And I mentioned earlier the Society of American Foresters. They are the accrediting body for forestry programs and are kind of the governing body that determines that programs are covering core competency areas to be in that forestry profession. And students at Duke in that Master of Forestry program are also, in addition to those kind of foundational knowledge and skills, are also able to specialize in particular things with their interests. It's also common for students to be able to combine both the Master of Forestry and the Master of Environmental Management. And the idea is that students are able to do both of those degrees here at the Nicholas School, and can do so usually in as few as 5 semesters. We do offer other combinations of professional master's degrees that we refer to as concurrent degrees or as dual degrees. And this is where students combine that professional degree program from 2 different areas of specialized knowledge. So for example, students who may want to focus in, business administration alongside environmental expertise may choose to do a concurrent degree between the Nicholas School and the business school. And information about that process is available on our website, and Nick will drop that link into the chat for the concurrent degrees as well. There's a lot of nuances with that, but the main thing is really to focus on this idea of what Juan Camilo was saying was not just learning, but actually doing in order to make effective change. And when we think about what that looks like as part of the program, we start that practical training and experience very soon. Really thinking of it through, I mentioned the student groups as a way to get experience and professional networking. We also are very lucky to have a dedicated career and professional development center with career coaches that work with our students. Every student who enters the Nicholas School receives a review of their resume, recommendations on how to make it stronger and more streamlined or more impactful. And the career readiness curriculum is something that follows students their full time with us here. So each semester that a student is here at the Nicholas School in one of our master's programs, they have the chance to work one-on-one with our career coaches, and also have access to workshops and events that they host with Nicholas School alumni or with employers and with other sort of skill building and resource building that comes with that. We also are very proud to see that our students are making an impact across different types of employment and working in different sectors, whether it is in private industry and business or not-for-profit organizations. We see students heading into government agencies at the local, state, and national and international levels. And we're really excited to also see students moving into other kind of emerging fields, if you will. So being able to see the ways that our students are adapting to new types of knowledge and entering new emerging fields in environmental work. And we also understand that when you graduate, the job you get when you graduate probably is not the job you will have forever, because your interests will grow and your interests may change and you may want to do something different later. And we provide support for our alumni because we believe that once you are a Nick School student, you are always a member of our community. And being also able to connect alumni not only with each other, but also with our current students is something that helps strengthen and build those relationships and allows students to start building that network and make those connections. And it's really exciting to kind of talk to the alumni who have been, out in the field for the last, however many years, 5, 10, 15, even 20, and the experiences they have that they are very excited to share with our current students. And Juan Camilo, I would love to pass it back to you to talk about, maybe what are some of the student groups or practical experiences that you have already had in your first semester? And then maybe what are some things you're excited to do that you haven't tried yet?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I have been able actually to engage with a lot of students that share common interests with me. So currently we're trying to set up a new student organization, a new student group here within the Nicholas Schools, a school that's called Nicholas School Diving Group, or Nick School Divers. And what we acknowledge as divers on this activity that we enjoy doing is that it also has a carbon footprint. So we want to make our club in a way that it helps account for that carbon footprint we're generating when to do things we like, such as diving. Also, I have taken the huge opportunity that was presented to me to be TA for one of the undergrad classes. And that's another way that you can complement your funding for the program and your life expenses. That's the Cynthia's topic, but opportunities are here and are here for you to be seized. And for you to take them and actually make good things out of them.
Cool. Cindy, with the mention of teaching assistantships and graduate assistantships, can you talk about the different types of assistantships, both kind of in general, but then using the Nicholas School as specific examples?
Sure. So a lot of times, when students come from a reference point of being most familiar with the research degrees, the doctoral degree, they understand assistantships to carry tuition waivers or living stipends. And that is not the case for the MEM and MF students. As part of their merit-based aid, some students will be offered an assistantship, but that does not carry any kind of stipend or tuition waiver. It pays, right now, the current rate's $3,000 for the year in the first year. It requires 8 hours of work per week during the first year and 2 semesters. And we identify jobs, and there's a whole application and assignment process so that you do interviews and then you state your preferences and you get matched to a job. The nice thing about it is that if you meet your obligations for the assistantship in your first year, and you are in good academic standing at the end of your first year, and you return the following year for your second year, that $3,000 converts to scholarship. And so it gets applied towards your tuition and fees to your bursar account. So, and it's the full $6,000. When you're doing the work, of course, you're put on payroll, they're required to take out taxes, unless you have a tax treaty, which you might. So there's some, you're not necessarily going to get that full $3,000 that first year, but you would get the full $3,000 as scholarship in your second year. So that's something that is offered to you as part of your merit-based aid. Now, some students will, as Juan Camilo is doing, will serve as an instructional assistant or a class assistant. Typically, the term that most people are familiar with is a teaching assistant, but we typically refer only to the doctoral students as teaching assistants. Now, that's a class by class. So if you come in with a really strong background in a particular area, for instance, I'm just going to pick on you, Juan Camilo, you have an engineering background. And so you could potentially serve as an instructional assistant for an engineering course. Or let's say you come in, you were an economics major as an undergrad. It might be that you could serve as an instructional assistant for an undergrad economics course. For students in the Nicholas School in the MEM and MF programs, more typically those kinds of opportunities come up during the second year after you've already taken a course and done well in it. So let's say you're coming in and one of your courses is statistics. And so you take the statistics course, Environment 710, and you do really well in it. It's a very large course, and the instructor sometimes hires MEM and MF students to serve as classroom assistants or instructional assistants. And if that were to be the case, then you would get hired, and I think it's $3,000 for the course. And you get put on the payroll and you get paid, and you do support the students and the faculty in that particular course. And that's only for one semester. So you could potentially do, it would be unusual to do 2 in one semester, but you could supposedly. But sometimes students will do 1 in both semesters of their second year. You just have to manage your time carefully. Now, you are on your F1 visa, and I'll leave the J1 out for the moment because most of you will be F1. You are allowed to work on campus. You do not need any particular special permission. So there are job banks. Some of them are eligible or open only to students who have work-study eligibility, which would not be you. But some of them are open to students who are just looking for a job to work on campus. The hours vary from 3 or 4 or 5 hours up to 10, 12, 13 hours a week. And so again, you have to gauge, excuse me, how much time you have to spend on that. But you don't have to have any special permissions to work on campus. So that makes that a little bit easier. You may not work in the community during the semester. You're not allowed to work off campus. Your F1 visa status will not allow you to do that. Now, we do have the Stand Back Fellowship Program, which provides opportunities for our students to work on campus, to work for organizations that have been selected to be part of that. And there is a pay involved. You do get paid for it. You do have to use CPT or curricular practical training. We provide guidance on how to do that, how you apply. That's all handled internally by Duke and the Visa Services Office. And it's intended primarily for summer, which is when the Stand Back Fellowship Program is available. So you're certainly eligible to apply and be considered, be offered a position, and then you can get paid for the work. And you have to be enrolled in a course. We have a special course that you get enrolled in. It doesn't count towards your degree, but it gives you a credit, and that satisfies the CPT requirement. Now, that's different from OPT, or optional practical training. Most students who want to work after they graduate will use optional practical training. And that has to be approved by the federal government. So it's not just an internal Duke process. You have to go out and make an application. It has to be approved. If it is approved, if you can find a job, it is good for a year. Because the MEM and MF are STEM degrees, science, technology, and engineering and math, there is the potential that it could be extended for an additional year. So there is that possibility that you could obtain OPT and have 2 full years of work in the US. Now, speaking as someone who has friends all over the world, I really want you, Juan Camilo, I'm looking at you. I want you to learn what you can, get the practical experience that you get through our degree programs, through working for a limited period of time in the US, and take that back to your home country. Colombia, other countries in the world need the expertise and the learning that you're going to get and earn and learn to take that back to help solve the most pressing environmental and sustainability issues in your home country. So it's great to get that experience in the US, and some end up staying. But we really want the majority of you to go back home and really put that into action there. So you do have opportunities to earn money while you're here on campus. Again, it's going to be a limited amount of money. It's not going to cover your expenses. So you can't rely on that. Don't come assuming that you'll be able to find enough money through jobs on campus to support yourself. I don't want you to fall into that trap. There are funds to support things like a field trip, short-term type experiences. Our Career Center has some limited funds available as well to support summer internships. So there are resources. And the other thing is that if you come here, we're going to feed you. So Juan Camilo, you know, we, especially now that COVID is behind us and we're back in person, we typically have a lot of events that have food, and that helps our graduate students offset their food budgets a little bit. So there are lots of ways to be involved. I think it's really important to put your focus on your coursework, your classwork, make that your priority. Then if you have an on-campus, you know, an assistantship, that's your next priority. Then any student organizations that you want to become involved in, those are ways that you develop your professional networks. The people that you're in class with are going to be your professional colleagues for the next 40 or 45 years, however long you work. So it's important to take advantage of those opportunities and experiences that allow you to develop those friendships that become your professional colleagues and networks. So that's your next priority, I think. Then I think you think about making sure that you have time for the things that keep you sane. You know, spending time with your loved ones, getting exercise, getting sleep, eating real food. Those are all things that are very important. It's a very fast, very intense 2 years. Goes by very quickly. So you need those other things in your life to help you maintain balance. Then you look and you see, well, after I've done my classes and I have an assistantship and I have my student organizations and I'm sleeping and I'm eating, how much time do I have left out of 24 hours? And what do I want to do with that time? And that's your call. And people like me are here to talk that through with you. If you want to strategize or have that conversation, I'm certainly happy to meet with any of you at any time. So that's sort of my soapbox. Sorry, that's not what Melissa wanted, but there it is for you. So that's kind of how that works. So you do have opportunities to work on campus, but you should not rely on those opportunities to provide you with sufficient support. And it's not guaranteed. You have to make the effort. We're not going to hand you a position and say, here you go, here's $3,000, go do this. You have to interview, you have to get yourself out there, you need to have a resume, and we're going to help you do all those things. But the burden, the responsibility is on your shoulders. This is a graduate program. So we are going to treat you like an adult.
Yep. Thank you so much, Cindy. Actually, one of our questions that we got through social media was exactly about OPT and work opportunities on campus. So I guess, you know, we already covered that. That's great. Thank you so much for mentioning about, you know, staying sane, spending time, you know, with people that you like, and doing things that you enjoy. Grad school is very stressful. It's a very stressful time. It's 100% worth it, of course, but it takes a lot out of you. I see Juan Camilo nodding. I know he can relate 100%. So thank you so much for mentioning that. I feel like a lot of students that are going into higher education tend to forget that. And, you know, mental health and everything is also very, very important. So we do have a couple of questions. Let's dive into those. The number one question, we always get this question, is about the English proficiency exam scores. I know you mentioned, you know, TOEFL and IELTS. Can we dig a little deeper into scores? Which test does Nick School prefer?
Absolutely. And I think I see another question also about the GRE, and Bianca, you sent me a note that we have a question about what makes a strong applicant. And so I think we can tie all of that together, especially with this idea of being healthy and whole and making sure that you maintain your humanity as a student. We are very conscious of the fact that environmental work is hard. Graduate school is very tough and demanding, but working in the environmental field requires stamina and requires resiliency and requires an ability to have that ongoing connection and ability to just keep going, to have that energy. Environmental work is very big and can feel very overwhelming. And so being able to have care for yourself and be able to care for others and let others care for you is something that is really important to not only being in graduate school and being part of a community, but it's something we hold very, very dear here at the Nicholas School, and we feel is very important, that we are not just teaching our students how to do environmental work, but also how to be environmental professionals and humans who both do this work and are affected by it. Being able to have those resources. And that starts with the application process. Our application process is what's referred to as a holistic review. And this means that we are looking at the whole application package. We are looking at your transcripts from all of your institutions that you have studied after graduating from high school. So most students tend to attend the same school for their undergraduate study for all 4 years. Some students may attend more than one institution, and we would need to see just any and all college or university level work. We look at your academic background, and we also are considering your resume with your experiences. We are asking for recommendation letters. We are also asking you to share what we refer to as a statement of purpose that explains to us why you want to do this work, why you want to do the particular program that you are applying to, and why you want to do it at the Nicholas School now. There is not necessarily this like expected timeline of when you go to a graduate school program. It's essentially after you finish undergrad, and we have students who may come to us directly after graduating with their bachelor's degree. We have other students who come to us after being away from school for a while and coming back to school. My favorite thing about our incoming student group every year is, you know, this year we had, I think, over 150 students join us on campus. We have over 40 different undergraduate areas of study represented in the majors and minors. So it is students with backgrounds in engineering or statistics or environmental science, as well as journalists and English majors and social scientists and psychologists and economists. Because as Juan Camilo was saying, we need people with all different kinds of knowledge in order to solve these really big problems. And when we look at your application, we want to see that you have a strong academic foundation to be able to do the academic work. And we also want to see that you know what you want to get out of this experience. And that's what you share through that statement of purpose, of being able to, you know, explain to us why you want to do this program and why you want to do it here. We also are very aware that standardized testing has been a challenge because of COVID. We are not requiring the GRE exam this year for this application cycle. We removed it from the last couple of cycles. We have not used the GRE. We are what is referred to as test blind. So we are not test optional. So if you do not have to take the GRE for us, and if you have your scores from another application, please do not send them to us because we are not using them in our evaluation for this application cycle at this time. We are currently evaluating that 1 year at a time as we see how it affects our application review, but we are very aware that standardized testing is a challenge. Duke, as an institution, requires that for students whose first language is not English, we do require an English language proficiency exam that can either be the TOEFL or the IELTS or the Duolingo. And Nick, if we can drop the link to our How to Apply page in the chat, this will have detailed information on each piece of our application process, including the English language proficiency information. For students who perhaps completed their bachelor's degree or other study in the US or another English-speaking country such as Canada or in Australia, that requirement of a TOEFL or an IELTS can be waived. There are also circumstances where a student may not need to take the TOEFL. In my experience, most students applying from Colombia who have done their studies in Colombia, you will need to be submitting a TOEFL. Even if you qualify for a waiver of that English exam, all students have that Zoom conversation that Juan Camilo was referring to. A member of our team has a video chat with all applicants whose first language is not English in order to have that real-time conversation. And it's really to get more information because we know that test scores don't always tell the whole story. You might have been tired that day. You might have had a rough week. You may not be at your best that day when you have to sit for that exam. And so that's why we do that video conversation to make sure that we have more than one data point, because at no point are we ever going to say this person equals this number. Transcripts and grades and TOEFL scores and IELTS scores, those are things that you have. They are not who you are. And we are very committed to that holistic review because we want to build a community of people who are here not only to learn together, but to work together. And as Cindy was saying, you're coming here and creating that community. But when you choose a graduate program, you're not only choosing your professional network, you're also choosing friends. When you come to school, you're going to spend a lot of time with the people that are in your classes and the people that are in your program. And that's part of your explanation or your exploration. Your exploration is figuring out, not only is this a program that will give me the skills and the knowledge to do the work I want to do, but is this program at this institution, are these the type of people I want to spend my time with? Are these the people I want to work with and learn from and be associated with for the rest of my career? And are these the people that I want to ask for help when I'm struggling with an assignment? Are these the people that I want to go diving with? Are these the people I want to go hike in the forest with on a weekend? Are these the people I want to, cook dinner with? You are not just a student. You're also, you're a human first, and then you're a student. And Cindy gives this wonderful, firm, encouraging speech at orientation and other times of make sure you make time for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think, do we have other questions coming in as well?
We do have one more. So we covered the TOEFL and IELTS scores. Duolingo, that's so great. I want to mention that, not every school allows a Duolingo test. So whenever you see a school that does, definitely take advantage because it's much more affordable than TOEFL and IELTS. So yeah, we covered that. We covered what it is to be a strong applicant, which was a question that we got through social media. And then our last question, it's kind of split in two parts, and you kind of already answered the first part. What documents do you need to fill as an international student? You already went through all the requirements, but they're asking about average cost of housing. So if we can touch base a little bit on that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, that is a great question.
I know it's a little tricky. It depends on a lot of stuff.
It is, yeah. Cindy, why don't we start with you and let you and Juan Camilo work this one out?
So one of the things that happens, so the budget for your tuition and fees and living expenses is set annually. It's set by the vice provost for financial aid for the university. They look at the general cost of living in the area. They look at every 3 years, they survey the graduate and professional school students at Duke to find out what their real costs are. And that's what influences things like how much is allowed in the budget for housing, how much is allowed in the budget for food. Now, this has been a very unusual year, and the cost of living has skyrocketed in this area, as has the cost of food, which is a supply issue around the world right now. So right now, it's a little bit tight, but it's doable. So you would probably need to have a roommate. Housing can run, depending on where you live, what kind of amenities, how many roommates you have. It could be $600–700 a month, all the way up to $1,500–1,600 a month. Again, it's expensive. It's gotten more so. Now, the university has responded to some of that by providing some limited. They've rented a relatively new apartment complex not too far from campus. They run a bus back and forth, and it was priority this year. This is the first year that they had it. Priority was for incoming international graduate and professional school students. So we do have some students who are living there. I don't know, Juan Camilo, are you living in those apartments? No?
No, I'm not, but I also wanted to comment that once you are admitted, you have at your disposal this huge resource that is called the Duke List. Yeah. So there you can find actually housing and really good housing prices, roommates, or even if you're starting your own like housing, you can look for roommates in there. It's a really nice opportunities. There are a lot of tools that Duke as institution provides to help go for those skyrocketing prices. Sometimes here at the Nick School, they have a really interesting proposal, and it's like a food pantry that if you're in real need of feeding yourself, but you can't afford it, you can go and pick up some of the food items that people donate to the food pantry. So it's like a mix of factors. And I will say this, just to wrap it up, it all depends on how you organize your living plans if you are admitted, and also how you organize your time.
Well, and I would also add that there's a lot, once you're all admitted, the students created a Slack group this year, so they communicate with each other. There's a visitation opportunity for incoming students. And they talk to each other at that time. And so a lot of people find roommates that way. And like Juan Camilo said, somebody may have found an apartment and be looking for a roommate, or somebody may be looking for an apartment and know somebody they want to live with. And so there's there's all different ways that we try to help you connect. We don't take responsibility for you finding housing. That's your responsibility. But we're going to provide you with a lot of information and support to facilitate that. And this apartment complex that was new this year, we're hoping will be expanded so that there will be more spaces available for incoming graduate and professional students, and that the university will continue to move forward in providing additional housing for international students, particularly. But there are a lot of apartment complexes that are within walking or biking distance of campus or served by a campus bus. So there are a lot of places that you can live relatively close, which means that you wouldn't necessarily need to drive a car every day, or maybe even not even have a car. Although it's not a bad idea to have access to one. So there are lots of ways that you can reduce your expenses.
Thank you so much, Cindy. What Juan Camilo was mentioning, it's the best thing you can do is connect with students, in my opinion. Of course, you know, university has so many resources, on-campus housing, off-campus housing. But what you were mentioning, Cindy, about everyone, you know, creating a Slack group and getting in touch with each other, finding ads, sharing information about vacancies. The question about cost of living sometimes is a packed question because it depends on everyone's, you know, financial situation. But those were all of our questions. I wanted to thank you all for being here once again. Thank you, Nick, Melissa, Juan Camilo, and Cindy. This information was absolutely wonderful. A todos los que están conectados el día de hoy, les recuerdo del maravilloso convenio que tenemos con esta universidad si se postulan al programa de crédito beca de Colfuturo. La convocatoria abre el 10 de enero, cierra el 28 de febrero y los resultados salen el 11 de mayo. Colfuturo financia programas en el exterior de posgrado de tiempo completo hasta $50,000. Hay mucha información sobre este programa en colfuturo.org y no olviden que el convenio que tenemos con Duke University Nicholas School of Environment es de mínimo $6,000. Entonces, como comentaba Cindy y Melissa, esta beca puede ser mayor, hay más ayuda financiera, entonces la verdad vale la pena que tomen provecho al convenio y a la convocatoria. Melissa, Nick, Juan Camilo, Cindy, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for all of the information. I hope you guys have a great evening, and I will see you at the next webinar. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.